Welcome to the Nutrition Collaborative podcast, where we cut through the noise, bust the myths, and bring you nothing but truth about health, fitness, and everything in between. I'm Alec Moore, dietitian, and each week we'll dive into what really works when it comes to achieving lasting health and fitness. No gimmicks, no BS, just real talk, real success stories, and a holistic approach to living your healthiest life. Whether you're here for practical tips, inspiration from real client journeys, or just to find out what's actually worth your time, this is the podcast for you. Let's break it down, get empowered, and focus on what truly matters for your health. Today, we're going to dive into some common culprits of gut disruption. And not to spread fear, but to hopefully make you a little bit more aware of what is causing those intermittent bouts of gut disruptions, such as bloating, gas, discomfort, irregular bowel movements, and things like that. You may not actually have a very chronic, severe gut issue. You may just have a couple habits that need to be adjusted, or types of food that you need to be a little bit more cautious with, and certain management principles such as stress management techniques and breath work, things like that may actually resolve all of your issues when it comes to gut health. And so we know that gut health, right, is a huge link between digestion, mood, energy. Immunity is a big one. So I want to help you today identify some everyday sneaky little habits, foods, types of foods that can alter your gut health and induce symptoms. So this is really all about awareness. And obviously, this is going to be extremely individualized. So I'm not here to say that these exact things are causing your specific gut issues, but in my day-to-day working with clients and patients, this is what I see very commonly. And removing these things or working on these habits and these types of foods and other compounds have had profound effects on relieving symptoms, severity, frequency, et cetera, and improving digestion and gut health in general. So I really am excited to dive in today, and I can't wait for you to hear all of these components. So the first one I want to start with is actually not food at all. Ironically enough, it is stress. So we're going to talk about stress. We're going to talk about caffeine. We're going to talk about high FODMAP foods. We're going to talk about and what those are. We're going to talk about cruciferous veggies. We're going to talk about raw versus cooked veggies. We're going to talk about fiber intake and consistent versus inconsistent fiber intakes. We're going to talk about alcohol, and a few other potential triggers for gut disruption as well that you may not be thinking about that you're consuming on a daily basis. So let's go ahead and dive into stress, right? There's a huge connection via the vagus nerve from gut to brain. It is called the gut-brain connection, or the gut-brain axis. And this actually affects your digestive rate. It can impact your digestive capacity due to altering your enzyme production in the gut, which can then slow gut motility, or on the other end, speed it up. Some people get stressed and they get real constipated. Others get really stressed and they have diarrhea. So again, this is very, very individualized, and I'm not here to, diagnose anyone or anything, but bring greater awareness to almost every side of the gut health topic here. Specifically when it comes to disruptions, symptoms, discomfort, etc. If your stress levels are so chronically elevated that it's altering your stomach acid production, your enzyme production, secretions, and overall gut motility, that chronic stress is essentially going to lead to bloating, discomfort, urgency, constipation, slowed digestion in general. And what comes from all of those things? Further symptoms, exacerbated symptoms, further discomfort, being fearful and also confused on what the heck is causing this. Oh, it's this food, it's that food. Well, it may just be the chronic stress. Now, chronic stress is not just some, mystical thing. It is physical, mental, and emotional. all in one bucket. So if you are thinking to yourself, well, I'm not really, stressed. I'm not a stressful person, or I'm not always stressed out. You may not necessarily feel stressed out, but your body and emotions are holding on to that stress somewhere and somehow. And so they can kind of facilitate or present in that manner over time via chronic stress. So I want to give some tips here. I'd say the first thing with this is set meal times. Don't be eating on the go. Don't be, rushing through meals, talking to your friends or loved ones or, your circle while you're trying to eat. Focus on taking breaths in between all of your food consumption. During your meal, sit down and have an actual meal time, and also work on stress hygiene. Like, are we regulating this stress? Are we journaling? Are we doing breath work? Are we meditating? Are we working out? Are we, getting the sun, etc.? So we just need to be aware of these stressors and know that chronic stress alone is a major driving factor for gut disruption. So that's the first one I wanted to talk about, of course. Now we can start to dive into more compounds and food related items and components of gut health. So the next one is caffeine. Okay. Caffeine, I mean, if you're familiar with, stimulants, many people do need stimulants just to go to the bathroom regularly. And without them, they can get constipated. So they definitely alter the nervous system, of course, and alter the gut motility or rate of gut motility. So it definitely can speed it up. This can cause loose stools. It can induce acid reflux even, and that has a lot to do with stomach acid and enzyme production as well. And this can exacerbate symptoms, especially when on top of stress. And a lot of people who are chronically underslept or underrested and overstimulated or overcaffeinated are just further exacerbating those stress levels and further exacerbating their gut disruptions. So you may, be overly stressed, hammering caffeine all the time, and you can't figure out why your gut is doing what it's doing. It may be those two things alone, but it may also be several others, which we can dive into. So what I'd recommend with caffeine is try not to have it on an empty stomach. Try to at least have something, water and food first before caffeine. That can be a huge preventer of potential gut issues by literally just having 20 to 30 ounces of water first thing in the morning and something to eat. It doesn't have to be a huge heavy meal, but something light to at least coat the stomach lining and give the caffeine something to work with versus just irritating your gut lining as soon as you wake up with nothing else in your digestive system. The next one I want to talk about is high FODMAP foods. What the heck is a FODMAP? Well, it's a fermentable carbohydrate coming from specific types of foods that I can definitely dive into. But what these types of compounds do, they draw water into the lumen of the gut and get fermented by gut bacteria, which if you are constantly feeding your quote unquote bad bacteria with these fermentable compounds, it can easily fire up bloating, gas, discomfort, and maybe quote unquote like a sensitive gut. So some examples of these, the oligosaccharides, because they are FODMAP. So you have the O, you have the D, and you have the M. The O, oligosaccharides, garlic, onion, wheat, legumes. For the D, you have disaccharides, lactose, monosaccharides, excess fructose, such as apples and honey, polyols for the P. Polyols, sorbitol, mannitol, which are basically like artificial sweeteners or non-nutritive sweeteners, mushrooms, sugar-free products. Now, they're not necessarily bad, so I don't want to give them a bad rap. Like, they can be really good. A lot of them are prebiotics, which you need to satisfy gut bacteria, to fuel gut bacteria, to help digest food regularly. So I don't want to say that they're bad, but some people react to them differently, and they can be a trigger, especially when combined with either, IBS, quote unquote, because it's a very broad term, other triggers such as stress and, caffeine overuse that I just mentioned. Those can also do it when you pair that with the high FODMAPs. So, and a lot of times you just can get away with using more of like a low FODMAP diet approach for a couple of weeks to reduce those symptoms and then ease them back in over time. So it's not something that we have to like fear or get rid of forever. It obviously, again, individualized per person. It's not a forever restriction, or it shouldn't be. I think it can be helpful to to one, an elimination diet, bring them back in when you feel comfortable, one at a time. So you know which foods specifically, or which high FODMAP foods specifically are doing it or causing the issues. You could also space these foods out. So if you have, a high FODMAP lunch, maybe don't have a high FODMAP dinner as well. Wait till the next day to have something of high FODMAP foods. So moving on from FODMAP, actually, before I move on from high FODMAP, let's talk about some resources for low FODMAP or how to know what types of foods have either high or low FODMAPs. And so you can go to ibsdiets.org/low FODMAP, and you can find a red section to limit or avoid, aka the high FODMAPs, or the green section to consume more regularly and freely and of less concern or caution for the low FODMAP items. Now, beyond that, we have the cruciferous vegetables. We know what those are, right? Those are like your broccoli, your cauliflower, your cabbage, your kale, Brussels sprouts even. And we know that those are known for developing gas. Those are your gas developers. And so if you have a sensitive gut plus high stress plus high caffeine intake, plus, high FODMAPs, and now we're talking cruciferous, then we're just creating more air, gas, and byproduct in the gut, which can then, of course, exacerbate symptoms, disrupt the gut microbiome, kind of tick it off, so to speak. So then that's when symptoms can occur. And then your gut lining is just inflamed and angry at you, and especially when they are raw. So I strongly recommend, especially if you have gut issues, cook your veggies thoroughly, please. Raw veggies, raw broccoli, raw, literally any type of raw veggie. If you have gut issues, cook it, saute it, cook it well, make it mushy, because if it's crunchy and hard to chew, it's going to be very hard for your gut to break it down, especially if you already have pre-existing gut health concerns or complications. So that's a huge one. Cook your veggies, eliminate cruciferous for a period of time if you have gut issues with the high FODMAP, right? So do low FODMAP, low to no cruciferous to calm those symptoms down, to reduce them for a moment before reintroducing them one at a time, very cooked and slowly, and then chew very thoroughly and slowly when you are consuming these foods again. Okay. So they contain sulfur plus fiber, and sulfur plus fiber can be a recipe, especially for those with sensitive guts, to easily start inducing gas, and therefore also, if you hold it in, bloating, discomfort. So another culprit, fiber intake, which in America we are very low on. So I want to say that gut bacteria thrives off of consistency and a routine. Your gut bacteria knows what it's getting. It's happy with it. So if we have very inconsistent fiber intake, if we have, 45 grams of fiber one day, 10 the next, 23 the next, 7 the next, 1 the next, 50 the next, your gut is going to be a wreck. It needs to be more regulated than that. It needs to be a little bit more consistent with that. So I would aim for a range, 30 to 40 for males, 20 to 35-ish for women per day, grams of fiber, that is, consistently as best as you can to prevent all of this. And if your diet or intake consists of constantly low fiber intake, then I would gradually increase it. Don't just jump straight to 40 grams a day, or you're going to induce further constipation, further discomfort, further bloat, you name it. You also want to drink a lot of water with your fiber intake, and you also want to have fiber from a variety of sources, not just like one main fiber source. Like you don't want to just do carb balanced tortillas twice a day to get your fiber in every day. You want variety from different types of foods, food groups, colors. Now, this one is probably very well established at this point that alcohol, right, is an extreme gut irritant. And if you are a frequent consumer of that, then you're also likely higher stress, poor sleep, caffeine use, all the ones we've said to this point. Plus, it can itself make the gut very sensitive, stress the gut lining out, create or induce basically like loose stools or inconsistency with stools, gut permeability, inflammation throughout the GI tract, and especially when doing it on an empty stomach, just like caffeine. So if there's no food to kind of mix these compounds with, these components with, then they're going to just mixed with the lining of the gut, which can be very sensitive. So alcohol is a huge one that if you are having major issues with your gut, eliminate it. Eliminate it for 3 to 4 weeks and see what happens, especially with everything else I've already mentioned to this point. All right, now those are the main ones I really wanted to mention today, but now I want to go into a couple other common ones that are commonly overlooked. Medications. Medications play a huge role in gut health and gut disruptions, etc. And so NSAIDs, antibiotics, proton pump inhibitors or PPIs for acid management, they all influence gut health. And a lot of them can trigger or worsen or exacerbate gut symptoms. So it's just something you have got to look out for. And if you are taking those and experiencing gut issues constantly, it might be something you need to discuss with your dietitian and your doctor. Late night eating, late night binge eating, frequent grazing. So not having regular meal times. If you're constantly just pumping food into your digestive system with no breaks, that can alter or that can flare up the gut for sure. And the late night eating can disrupt it because, not for everybody, but if you have a huge bolus of food that's tough to break down and then you go lay down and go to sleep, this can definitely cause disruptions as well. So I always recommend about 2 hours or even more before going to bed to have your final meal if you are having gut issues. If you're fine with it, myself, I can get away with it. I can have a meal and go straight to sleep. Not everybody is like that. Now, maybe not all the time. Maybe sometimes I do have issues with like a random flare due to stress or caffeine overuse or something like that. The next one would be dairy. Can often induce cramps and bloating. But again, I'm not here to spread fear, just awareness. So I'm not here fear-mongering dairy and gluten, but they can be gut disruptors in sensitive individuals, sensitive to those specific things. This is a huge one. Artificial sweeteners, sorbitol, sucralose, mannitol, aspartame sometimes even. They can be rough on the GI tract, depending on who you are. I had a professor in college once. She could even have like a sniff of it, and it was awful for her GI tract. She had to like stay at home, couldn't even go to work, type of thing, if she even had just a tiny little bit of it. And so if you're constantly using macro-friendly products and therefore artificial sweeteners that they use for these macro-friendly products and stuff, highly processed, et cetera, then you're running a risk of coming into contact with these artificial sweeteners. And if they are an issue for you, you will find out pretty quickly. So it's an important one to consider. The next one is dehydration. If your GI tract and digestive system is not lubricated from good hydration status, think of a desert. I mean, it's dry, it's dusty, and it's hard for things to pass through. That's your digestive system. Slows digestion, leads to constipation, and therefore backs you up and induces further symptoms. So to recap here, some takeaways. There's no, one size fits all solution. This is all so individualized and experimental for each individual. It really does come from like patterns. These symptoms come from patterns, not necessarily just one food item. Focus on your stress management, consistent fiber intake, hydration status, meal spacing, not overeating at each bolus of, each food bolus or meal that you have, food journaling so that you know what you're consuming and can look back on certain data and assess that with your dietitian and come up with a solution moving forward from there if needed. And, in the times that are important, such as random, intermittent, temporary flares. So digestive health is one of my favorite topics. And so I'm going to keep diving into digestive health, gut health, you name it. So if you have anything that you would like to hear more specifically about when it comes to gut health from me on this podcast, please let me know. I'm happy to discuss further because it is a wildly important topic and a very complex one as well. And not a lot of individuals know the depths of these gut health subjects. So I hope you learned something today, and I hope that you can get relief on your journey soon. Help of this podcast. I'll see you soon.